banter. Banter is supposed to be a thing, right?
Opening day for the Cardinals today, right? I think that's today.
Wow,
Little
that was
St.
abrupt.
Louis news.
That was abrupt. Yes, it is. It is opening day. I tell you what, opening day around here has been a lot less exciting since a couple of terrible
Since our patron
seasons.
saint Albert
Our
Pujols
patron
left.
saint Albert Pujols. No, our patron saint wasn't Albert Pujols. The patron saints, dual saints, were Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright. Take that back.
Pujols supremacy. Pujols supremacy. I'm sorry.
Supremacy. You supremacist. We have Phyllis Schlafly has a book about that. I'm going to have to send it over to
about
you.
Albert Pujols?
Don't get the concept. No, about supremacists.
Oh, no, I got that somewhere.
Track with me. Yeah, I know. I've got two copies right up here on the shelf. Track with me. Oh, my goodness. Well, welcome, everybody, to today's Unauthorized Caucus, where it's getting very unauthorized with some really terrible baseball opinions from a very terribly Hawaiian man, Mr. Andrew Muller, who is joining me yet again. I'm sad, though, Andrew, that your patriotic Hawaiian attire has just switched. Well, no, it's kind of like camouflage Hawaiian. I appreciate this, although it's mainstream. It's not real. It's Columbia. So it's kind of the white man's Hawaiian shirt.
Right.
No offense. It's just
this is like country bumpkin Hawaiian type of a thing.
Well, I don't know if I'd go country bumpkin Hawaiian, but yeah, I see your point. So, But welcome everybody. Thank you for being with us. Andrew is joining us one more week. Mason just had to cry uncle because he told me, Andrew, you are better at this than he is, and he just needed another week to recover and lick his wounds. No, I'm kidding. Mason, if you're watching this, I did not. I didn't endorse that, but Andrew did say that about you. So anyway, no, we've got a good show ahead. We've got a lot of things we want to talk about. But before we do that, let me remind you, everyone, go to I've been hosting Ed's show. I almost ran into his website. Go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Also go to phyllisschlafly.com. There you will find all of the important things at Unauthorized Caucus. You can sign up for the email list, which is extremely important. You'll get the redacted email, and you'll get warnings when we're about to come live. And then, of course, go and follow us on social media. Wherever you are watching right now, hit the like and share buttons. Let someone know we're starting some good conversations. They should listen, and then you should talk about it with them. And then, of course, also, you can hit the subscribe button, the big green one on Rumble, big red one on YouTube. We would appreciate it. Leave a comment, jump into the chat. Let us know you're here. Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, someone says, throws the power fist in the air. See, the chat's already sounding off, Andrew, on your terrible opinions and also an era of Cardinal baseball that neither one of us lived through. So I'm closer,
I can respect it. Yeah, I can respect that era for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if Lou Brock had a 700 home runs, though, but that's okay.
No, I don't know, but Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, man, we're talking the Gibby there. We're talking about some incredible era of Cardinals baseball, Whitey ball, getting into the Whitey ball era. But there's been a lot going on, and I know that sometimes you and I did this the last couple of weeks. We kind of went into one particular topic or issue, but there is so much that has happened in headlines that's being talked about. And as you and I both know and discuss in our day jobs with Phyllis Schlafly Eagles and Liberty Sentinel, this gets lied about, this gets manipulated, the truth is distorted, or just facts are completely omitted from what so many of us, even those of us looking for information and truth, where we go looking. It's important to talk about some of these things because there are some major consequential things, particularly in an election year, that we ought to talk about and kind of understand what's happening, why it's happening, what we think about it, and then how we're going to go out as conservatives and communicate that to people. So we got some of those topics today, and there's about 3 of them. We'll see what all we can get to, although Andrew and I here, we're getting in the habit of getting close to an hour with everyone's time. So you never know. We might just, one of these days, we're going to keep you, and you'll all revolt at a certain point. But let's dive into it. Andrew, let me run through a couple of lists here, and then I want to bounce a few things off of you and have you kind of come back with your take on the situation. First of all, RFK Jr. This has been a very interesting name discussed in the presidential race. You know, he's been talking with the Libertarian Party about their nomination instead of running as an independent. But this week, you and I were going back and forth, and you called it, not your first choice, but your second or third prediction. You said Nicole Shanahan.
It was my second
sure
one,
enough,
yep.
Nicole Shanahan, here it is. Now, Nicole Shanahan, for those of you who don't know, is an attorney, a big philanthropist, I think, but she is very left, very progressive, not old school liberal, not anything that looks like RFK really, or at least how RFK has presented himself, which we know he's no conservative. But this is a very interesting choice that certainly does not seem like the libertarian nominee for VP. So where does this, I'm kind of curious where this leaves us. Is the libertarian option off the table now? Trump referred to the Kennedy Shanahan ticket as the most progressive ticket.
Yeah.
I think this is interesting because I don't think well, I'm already of the mind that it was not a foregone conclusion that any kind of RFK third party run would take away from Trump as much as, if not more than Biden. I don't think that's the case. I think this definitely seals the deal that is not the case now. In fact, this may make him completely irrelevant if they're trying to swing the progressive votes, which are lockstep with the Democrat Party. What do you think? Does this have any impact on the whole 2024 shape up moving forward?
I think it totally does have impact. I think there's really three possibilities, and I'll try not to make this long-winded. I think possibility number one is probably on the more unlikely side, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. Robert Malone, the great Dr. Malone, shared this in a Substack post yesterday, which I thought was very enlightening. He said that this is Ronald Reagan running against Gerald Ford in 1976 all over again, where it's not necessarily a race he knows he's going to win, but this is going to be something he's doing to get out there, to get support, pull away from Joe Biden, and then in 2028 come in and be a powerhouse candidate. So that is a possibility. I think that's an interesting consideration because RFK has been appealing a lot to the right recently, especially the disenfranchised right, who's wanting something different than the GOP has to offer. He's appealing to them. And now with Nicole Shanahan as his pick, he's appealing to the more kind of hippie, Marianne Williamson type Democrats who are disenfranchised with the Democratic Party. But I could see this just being a big name recognition, big media spectacle to get RFK's name out there, to take votes from Biden, to kind of eat away at the Democratic Party a little bit, come back in 28. And, he's an older guy, RFK Jr., but he's also probably one of the healthiest later 70-year-old guys I've ever seen.
Yep.
So I don't think health is going to be one of his number one concerns waiting another 4 years. So that's possibility number one. Possibility number two is that this was just a really out of the blue choice. RFK still in this to win it. But, this is somebody who has a lot of money, who's willing to help him. I can't remember the specific number. It was 4.1 or 4.2 million. Nicole donated to make that RFK Super Bowl ad happen. She's all in financially. She's going to be a huge money pit for him to be able to help him out with this campaign. And this was just a strategic optics financial decision. That's a possibility. And then the third possibility, which is real 4D chess, is that RFK is just doing this to pull away votes from Joe Biden and to secretly help out Donald Trump. Is that what's going on? I don't know. I do know RFK and Trump have worked together. Donald Trump tapped RFK during COVID to do some research. They have partnered together in the past. I know that RFK has made statements to say, I'm not going to be Donald Trump's VP. I'm not going to, align with his politics. But at the end of the day, this could be something to just erode the Democrat Party. So in any of those situations, it has an impact on our current election. I do think it is unfortunate that Nicole Shanahan is really hitting hard on AI. She's talking about humanistic ethics in AI and making that a big part of her campaign. I am so against AI in government and so against government regulation of AI. It's not even funny. I think that's going to take us into a 1984 type situation faster than you can say stop. And so it's an interesting pick. It's definitely out of the Tulsi would kind of be the ideal pick from our point of view. And I think if he did pick Tulsi, that would actually be a huge red flag for Trump, be very concerning for his campaign, as I think some voters would peel away potentially for that ticket. So in any case, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that one of the factors is, well, let me say this. I don't think that there was really ever so much of a strong inclination for conservatives to go for RFK Jr. But I think that one of the things that Bobby Kennedy offered was a very good take on mistrusting the deep state. And, and that's where it's kind of interesting. I've heard him talk because, he and Trump know each other. They've been in contact over the years. You said you made a couple of points there. But one thing I've heard, especially in the last 6 months or so on a few different podcasts he's done, Bobby Kennedy Jr. has talked about how very shocked and upset he is that Trump decided not to release the files on his uncle in full.
Yes.
And he wants to know. And of course, he wasn't really accusatory, but his first comment was, I want to know. Someone who supposedly was so riled up to go and do this right thing for transparency came in. What did they tell him? What was said to him to make him change his mind? I just want to know. I want to get into the room and same room with him and ask him. And I haven't been in the same room with him since that happened, which that was what, 2017, when Trump was supposed to, well, federal law was supposed to release the files and the Trump administration decided to release some of them, not all of them. I think it was 17, maybe 18. That's a very interesting streak that I think that RFK Jr. has emulated for conservatives, that they've liked, this anti-deep state understanding of the intelligence agencies, the alphabet agencies. But that is not enough to go on. And obviously that is not at the core of who RFK Jr. is because of who he's picked as his vice president. We can see this, this isn't just someone who kind of appeases the left. This is, to your point, this is a very left of center person, a very, very progressive person. It's really interesting. So we'll see how that shapes up. I do think, though, that, and we talk about this pretty frequently on the Pro America Report, on all the different places that we discuss, we talk about polls. Poll numbers mean nothing, but trends are something that we can in fact extrapolate from polling. And the trend lines for Trump are very interesting, especially with the entrance of Shanahan into the RFK equation, which again, I don't think that was really taking away from Trump so much as it would take away maybe some of the old time Democrats from Biden. Honestly, though, I don't think that RFK Jr.'s presence in the race was going to have any sort of significant electoral effect on the outcome of Biden versus Trump. Now, the polling numbers, and this is something I did want to get into, the polling numbers for Trump have been astronomical in 6 out of 7 states, 6 out of 7 swing states, very key swing states. Trump is leading everyone. And we're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7% leads. Georgia up 7, Arizona up 5, Nevada up 2, North Carolina up 6. They're dead even in Pennsylvania and Michigan. This is really interesting because I think, and this is what I want to get your take on, aside from all the polls, kind of moving past the headlines, my inclination is that in order to win the election, and here we're about to run into YouTube land, so if you're watching on YouTube, it's possibly time for you to hop over to Rumble because I'm about to say some stuff about 2020 that YouTube doesn't like. I am of the mind that the only way that we win, I think that Trump wins in a landslide. Any Republican wins in a landslide against Joe Biden this fall, absent fraud. That's a big but, because that's exactly what took the election in 2020, was very key fraud in very key places, and not that many, but it flipped the entire electoral map. Now, I don't think that there has been serious accountability in those places on this issue since 2020. So I have no reason to expect really anything different than the same kind of meddling. So what's the only way to beat that? To have an overwhelming, unimpeachable landslide victory that they can't cheat to overcome. If it's close, they can cheat to overcome it. So the way that happens, I don't think that Trump could pick a vice presidential candidate or announce a policy that would bring over enough of the middle ground or the hesitant Trump or the anti-Trump folks to his side to bring that kind of landslide. But I do think that he could energize and motivate his own base that already likes him enough to swell the numbers and get so excited and worked up to bring more people on board that they could flood the polls, early votes, and the actual election day polling places in November, and have unimpeachable, huge landslide victories in places that we have seen cheating to overcome slim victories. My take is that he's got to pick a vice president who is full Make America Great Again, not someone who's a unity pick, not some party person. That's what he did in 2016, and I think it was a winning strategy because the reason he got elected, in my opinion, in good part was because of Mike Pence. He picked someone who made a lot of regular Republican folks comfortable with him. Well, now we're in a whole different era. We're a whole different set of dynamics. I think that will be potentially a detriment because he will lose the enthusiasm of folks like me if he picks a swamp monster. And I don't think that he could pick anyone that would make the swamp monsters out there voting like him or vote for him more than they already don't want to do now. What's your take on that? I tend to say that that is our only ticket to winning the election this year, is a massive, massive movement of the Trumpian populist right side base is to see an explosion of votes increasing there. And I don't think that any compromises with the establishment will make that voting block bigger, but they certainly won't make the establishment voting block bigger for Trump. It already is what it is. What's your take on that?
I agree with it. The only thing that a vice presidential pick could do is it could sway a little bit of that suburban mom vote. If he has somebody who's a little bit more on the tamer side or whatever. But even still, those type of voters are really tough. And like you said, there's no Mike Pence pick in this election. It's a very different election at a very different time. Picking somebody who is going to be on the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah, they're conservative, but they're a little more, selective with their words, and they're a little kinder and they're a little softer on these issues that Trump has a different perspective. No, that's not going to do anything because you either love Trump or you hate Trump. And it's just at this point, how far are you willing to act on one of those two emotions? So I think the only way forward is a full MAGA ticket. I agree with you completely. I actually read a very interesting opinion piece. I don't know if I agree with it yet, but it was out of Revolver that I saw somebody sent to me. And I was reading it, and they were suggesting J.D. Vance as a potential pick. But J.D. Vance or not, the point is still applicable here, that it needs to be somebody who can campaign really hard on their own, has a Trump-like personality in a sense, really good communicator, hardliner on all the big issues that we care about, pro-America, protecting our border, obliterating the deep state. They have to be proficient on that. They have to be outspoken. They have to have this kind of Ronald Reagan, Vivek Ramaswamy, Donald Trump hybrid type communication style. And that's going to be needed because you might have Donald Trump in court for a huge part of this, unfortunately. And he's going to need somebody to go out and campaign on his behalf. It's going to have to be somebody who's super energetic and somebody who is super involved in the campaign. So out of all the picks I've seen, I know he's already dismissed Vivek, which is unfortunate. I think Vivek would actually be a fairly decent pick. But either Vivek or somebody like J.D. Vance, I cannot see somebody like Kristi Noem or Tim Scott or God forbid, Elise Stefanik or somebody like that. Horrible pick.
Tell me what you think, Andrew.
Yeah, it would just be horrible. So it needs to be full MAGA. And I do agree with you as regards to getting people out. We know that there's been election fraud, Ryan, for at least 60 years, going all the way back to 1960. Richard Nixon versus John F. Kennedy. I learned a lot about that as I was doing some research for an article I wrote on the Kennedy assassination. And that's exactly what happened. I think those are really interesting elections, the 2020 election, the 1960 election, where Richard Nixon, by all means, probably should have won that election. But John F. Kennedy, through his father's connection, particularly to organized crime in Chicago, mobilized an army of mobsters, basically, to go around, and there's stories about mobsters, carrying 20,000 in cash, going and, swaying people to vote just in the right counties and the right swing states to just enough voters. So it's not a blip on the radar. It's not mass voter fraud, but it's just enough to push you over the edge. Maybe no one will notice. That type of fraud is what has been happening in this country for 60 plus years. But if Trump comes in, particularly with what just happened in 2020, all eyes like hawks on elections, it's going to have to be a huge win that would take an astronomical amount of fraud to overturn, I think, to defeat Trump. So really the answer here isn't can Trump win? It's just how much of a margin can we create so that the deep state doesn't have the goal to reach that level of fraud to surpass his margin. So I agree with you. It has to be full force. If you're somebody who knows somebody who's on the fence about Trump, it just needs to be, we need to go full-fledged, campaigning for him and just saying, get out there and vote for him, because it's going to take an army to make this happen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the chat's going wild today in all the different areas. Someone over on YouTube is suggesting Larry Elder for VP. Larry Elder.
I like Larry Elder, yeah.
Yeah, that guy's take no prisoners. If you're trying to find someone who fits the bill of the traditional, let's pick a minority or a woman or this or that. Well, there's your African-American guy, but then Larry Elder pulls no punches for the left. He is rock solid on the communication side. That could be interesting, but none outside the swamp. Now, I will say, I see here on Trumpist style secondary to Trumpist policy. Mason says. Mason's in the live chat, everyone, by the way. If you're missing him, go over to the Rumble chat, get your Mason fix. He's got a little baby on his lap, apparently, and he's watching and chiming in, even though he's not on the stream yet today. But someone is suggesting a couple others, Christy Nome, Sarah Sanders, Josh Hawley. I want to say something, because you took a shot at Christy Nome, which by the way, whoa, hitting my own chair there. By the way, let me express why you will hear Andrew and I both say, no way. Sorry, dad pun.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. It's bad, but I had to say it. But here's the deal. So Christy Nome, I think, is not horrible, but proved herself to be beholden to the establishment, or someone, we'll say it that way, I think, when she had a golden opportunity in a red state handed to her on a platter to stop the wave of transgenderism inside women's sports and a few other key things, and she chose not to move forward. There were some other governors who did the same thing. They walked away very scathed, very, very badly hurt in conservatives' eyes, like Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas. Christy Nome made the same blunder, and to me, it's not necessarily that she made some big, horrible mistake, but she was handed a golden opportunity that it was absolutely the right thing to do and didn't do it, despite her legislature being on the side of it. That to me is a big red flag. And I think for a lot of conservatives, that's kind of a big hit the brakes. Wait a minute. Are you principled conservative or not? Because this should be an easy one. This isn't even that controversial. Other governors have done things way more controversial. So that's why I think you're going to hear Andrew and I. Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew. Is that a decent explanation? Because I want people to understand what we're saying.
No, that's 100% correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Yeah, don't hear us we're not like bashing her like she's Liz Cheney or something. I mean, Christy Nome's okay, but I've got some questions. I've got more questions than I have answers, and that gives me great pause. And to be clear, I have questions still about Vivek Ramaswamy. He hasn't been on the scene very long, but he has been in tune, and pretty consistently so, with where conservatives are and the movement is in America. Is it an act? Maybe, but he hasn't given me a pause, a cause for concern, a pause on what I think Christy Nome has. So that's why you'll hear us saying that. I want to take a moment and explain that. Backtracking. Yeah, I know Nome backtracked, but still, it was a golden or silver platter moment, and she didn't take it. Phyllis is in the chat talking about that. Tulsi Gabbard speaking to California GOP this past weekend. Lots of people. Tulsi Gabbard falls into the RFK thing for me. She's not conservative, but I appreciate her voice on some issues. She could be very interesting, but I would like to see something else somewhere. I don't know. We'll see. But let's move on, Andrew, into the next.
Let me throw this out here.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've got one final thought on this. This is like, if you're a sports fan, since it's the opening day for the Cardinals, this is like you're playing an NBA game and you've got 2 seconds left on the clock, and you can either throw the ball to Kevin, who just made the high school basketball team, or you can throw the ball to Michael Jordan, who's won 5 NBA championships. Should probably throw it to Michael Jordan, right? So this is a situation where America's on the brink. And I really mean that. America's on the brink. Yeah. So obviously Donald Trump's our man for the moment here, but a vice president's not nothing. And particularly in a country where presidents have been assassinated, presidents have been, killed for going against the establishment. A vice president is, you go back to John F. Kennedy and you look at Lyndon Johnson, right? That was a bad vice presidential pick. There's a lot of history there that you could go into as to why JFK chose Lyndon Johnson. But he ended up picking somebody who became president of the United States as a result of his vice presidency and changed the course of American history. So in this moment of Trump picking his VP, yes, we love Trump. He's great. God willing, he wins and he serves a full 4-year term. But we need to have somebody who, in that horrible situation, can take the mantle of the presidency and do just as good of a job, if not better. And somebody who's been a Democrat all their life and now just came to the light. Great. Love to have you. Thanks for being here. But we're not going to put you in number 2 when our country's on the brink. We need something that's solid as steel here to take us over the finish line. And that's why Ryan and I are saying full MAGA, go with somebody with zero doubt this person's going to be on our side. They're going to have loyalty. They're going to be, a free thinker and hit all these issues: anti-globalism, destroying the deep state, pro-America, securing the southern border, American energy independence, all these huge things. They have to be all in for that, and they also have to be completely bold and know the way of the enemy. And I think Tulsi is great, but she's been on the other side for her whole life until, just recently. So that's why we need to throw the ball to Michael Jordan, to go back to my illustration there, and get the best pick possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I think it's a good place to leave it off. Let's move on and see if the chat follows us into just as much chatter, since they're coming alive about the vice presidential picks. Maryland. Let's go to Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland. For those who haven't seen, the Francis Scott Key Memorial Bridge collapsed this past week. Was this Monday morning, early Monday morning, 1:30 a.m.? I think it was early Monday morning, 1:30 a.m. Now, when I say collapsed, a huge freighter in the harbor lost power a couple of times, supposedly. This is all on video. You can go and watch it. I recommend watching the 8 times speed video. That one's very interesting. When you can see, because it's a giant ship. It's moving really slow. But when you watch it up to speed, loses power a couple times, takes a very, very sharp right-hand veer, going under this giant bridge, which this is 695, massive. The I-95 corridor on the East Coast is one of the biggest transit and industrial pipelines in America, the I-95 corridor. So the 695 giant mile-long plus bridge hits one of the pylons underneath the bridge, one of the 2 major structural points. The entire bridge collapses in literally seconds. It's one of the most incredible pieces of footage I've seen. And I want to say there was a pothole crew was on the bridge, and there were some other cars. There's still people missing and presumed dead. A really terrible and tragic situation. Now, here's the thing. There are many, many very credible sources talking about how this is shaping up to be no accident. And this is not news to me. I've been seeing this possibility discussed since this first happened. And then within the first 24 hours, a lot of wheels being put onto some of this. But this is news to some people still, to hear that spoken out loud. You're telling me there's a conspiracy? This was done on purpose? Well, yeah, there are a lot of people, including Lara Logan, who is a good independent journalist, very credible, very good reporter, lots of awards from good folks. She has done her homework whenever she talks out loud. That is my assumption about Lara Logan. Her first reaction was to say that multiple intelligence sources of hers are talking about this bridge collapse as an absolutely brilliant strategic attack against critical U.S. infrastructure. Cyber and our intelligence agencies know it. A cyber attack and our intelligence agencies know it. Now, that is a bold claim for a lot of folks who are not paying attention to what's going on. But the more things that stack up, the more likely that kind of thing looks, that this is a very specifically directed attack on a very specifically strategic roadway that handles hazardous material, oversized material, all kinds of stuff. I mean, this is huge. And it's going to take years to recover because of the damage that was done from this thing hitting at the right spot. Well, this is, I've introduced the concept, but I just want to hand it over to you and see if you have any thoughts about this. I'm not sure there's much to say other than, hey, folks, this is the kind of thing, it gets buried from the news. But if you really go and look for it, you start to see whether it was food shortages since 2020 or baby formula shortage. There are so many things that just don't pass the smell test. This doesn't look like it's natural. A fire at this food plant, a fire at that livestock plant.
Right.
All of these things that are very critical to the infrastructure of the U.S., whether it's physical infrastructure or our food supply chain, there is so much stuff happening. Here's my question. Andrew, what do you think is going on? Is this China cyber attacking us? Is it Russia? Is it Iran? Or is it the CIA? And here we go. YouTube shutting us down again. Go over to Rumble. But I mean, seriously, all joking aside, what's your hot take on this? Because there's been too much of this stuff, and now a major infrastructure roadway gone, obliterated over the course of one evening, one night. What do you think? What's your take on what's going on?
Well, first of all, we don't know anything for certain yet. So just as disclaimer for that, the only thing we know for certain is that it happened. However, per Lara Logan, who I think is a very intelligent and capable journalist, she was on Steve Bannon the other day on War Room, which is a very credible program, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. And, just a few facts about this bridge really quick. I mean, it's like you alluded to, a lot of fossil fuels go over this bridge. A lot of hazardous materials go through this bridge: propane, diesel, gasoline. A lot of things we need travel across this bridge. So taking it out is a big hit on the American economy and America's energy infrastructure. So that's one thing. It's not like it's just a bridge that's a commuter bridge. Actually has a huge economic implication for its destruction. Secondly, from all the reports we've seen, anybody who works in cargo shipping and in ports, particularly in that area, looks at that footage and has said, there's no way any trained, crew is going to drive a ship like that. These things are heavy. They're large. There's certain streams and paths in the water you follow. No one takes a turn like that. And nobody does anything like that.
They're usually driven by harbor pilots in these areas.
Yes.
If there was no harbor pilot, there were so many. It's not just one, like tons of safety protocols just happen to be
out
missing.
the window.
Yeah.
And then also the power goes out multiple times. So here are a couple theories, and they're just theories. I don't fully believe all these, but they're all capable. First of all, we know our CIA is completely capable of doing false flag operations, and they're perfectly willing to even do things at the detriment of America. You can go back to Operation Mongoose. You can go back to a whole bunch of different things, and you can go and look at that and see it for yourself. You can even go and look at various conspiracies about, like the assassination of John F. Kennedy, for example, and see that the CIA is very open to doing things to harm America for global interests. So one possibility is that the U.S. was maybe involved in the terrorist attack in Moscow to make Russia look, really bad, and to attack Russia, make them look weak, provoke them, and that this was a Russian cyber attack in retaliation to the United States and the CIA, sending some of those terrorists over to Moscow to do that horrible terrorist attack that happened the other day. Could be that. Could be the CIA on their own doing this, and then in coming days or weeks, we'll see that the United States government blames this on the Russians, and therefore justifies and encourages more involvement in the Ukraine war, giving money to Ukraine, making Russia the enemy. This could also just be a cyber attack from another nation. But in any situation, I don't think this is just a happenstance. And just to go down the rabbit hole to one point, I'm not saying, don't take this comparison and say that I think Obama did this or anything.
Now,
but
everyone write this down as gospel. Andrew's about to say something.
No, yeah. No, not gospel. But Obama helped produce a film last year called Leave the World Behind. And it went out on Netflix. And the whole premise of the film was it was this white family that moved into an Airbnb. There was a cyber attack, which brought about a civil war. And a part of that cyber attack that took place was there was a cargo ship that lost power and crashed and killed a whole bunch of people. So I'm not saying Obama was behind that. Again, don't take me as saying that. But it is interesting that we had the former president, Barack Obama, arguably still the guy holding the reins in the Democratic Party, make a movie about a cyber attack in which a cargo ship crashes into a beach in this particular instance, kills tons of people. And now we see a cargo ship as a result of probably a cyber attack. So it's just really interesting. But we see that Klaus Schwab and a lot of evildoers on the global stage at these organizations talk about a cyber attack, bringing about the Great Reset. So in any situation, this should just be a wake-up call to us as Americans that we need to be energy independent. We need to have protections on our grid. We need to have a backup in case of a grid failure. And we also need to have skepticism towards our government. So in any situation that you can, present or think of as plausible in this situation, those pillars of truth, which I just shared, that the U.S. needs to be prepared, need to double down on our grid, need to have a grid backup, and need to recognize the globalist agenda within cyber attacks, and then also the depravity of our own internal government and their ways and means should apply to any possible outcome on this.
Right. And I will say my own additive, and I don't have anything else really after this other than distrust. What is it? Ed always says distrust and verify. Distrust, then verify. This is a very good mantra for us in 2024 as conservatives. Pardon me, but I will say one thing that I'm seeing, and this would be what I'd call one of those, be careful, the conspiracy is the conspiracy, don't buy it. In an era of, well, for lack of a better term, in the Boeing era of quality control problems, whistleblowers, and sudden suicides. which
Yeah.
I live in St. Louis, very near Boeing. I don't want to die, so I'm not going to say anymore. In that era, this kind of stuff is very believable. And one of the main things I'm seeing several places, including conservative sources, are reporting factual information. The Department of Labor in 2023 actually sanctioned the shipping company linked with this vessel. The vessel is owned and operated by a different group, but it was chartered by the Maersk Lines Limited, MLL. I don't know if it's Maersk, so we're going to say MLL, but it had MLL cargo on it, and it was time chartered by MLL, and MLL had received a nearly $500,000 judgment from OSHA, I think, and the Department of Labor for some supposedly problematic safety issues on another ship back in like 2017, and I think also back in safety issues 2020, and then they were sanctioned in 2023. So I can very easily see the story spun up. Look at this, another safety issue. There's whistleblowers. That's what this is. We'll chalk it up to that. No, I am a very high advocate of that. You're trying to lead me down a conspiracy road of whistleblowers and company quality assurance issues, and I think it's actually something else. This is the conspiracy you want me to believe. I'm not going to look at that. I'm going to look elsewhere because I think the truth is somewhere else. So in the redacted email, which you'll want to be on today, go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. You're going to want to get on that because we've got, Andrew mentioned it, I have the clip from Laura Logan on War Room. We've got a couple of tweets from her that I think are incredibly important, and I'll include this story too from Just the News. So you can see what happened in 2023 with this company. There's a lot of stuff going on, but this is a very good exercise in following the information and looking for the story behind the story, not what we're being told. Yeah, and someone over here, I'll put on the tinfoil hat. Put on your tinfoil hat. Get ready for the redacted email to come to your inbox. You will be good to go. But yeah, that's what we've got to say there. Yeah, and 35 minutes from DC. That's another very valid and very interesting thing. Yeah, look here, not there. Okay. Let's hop on to our last topic, at least the last topic that I wanted to cover. Another one I've seen this week. We talked quite a bit about Josh Hawley, but Aaron Hawley, his wife, has been in the news, arguably. What did I hear someone say? Inarguably, the superstar of the Hawley couple is Aaron Hawley, which I think that I would hear Josh agree with that. But she is a lawyer with Alliance Defending Freedom. She is in front of the Supreme Court this week arguing over something very important, very consequential, the FDA's approval of these abortion drugs, abortion pills, the mail order abortion pills, which we've been hearing so much about. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has made, I think inarguably, we can all say, a very critical error in stripping away a bunch of, and you can argue about, the FDA and food safety and how it's been in America, but they are stripping away a lot of very critical safeguards and hurdles to cross in order to accelerate the pushing out of mail order abortion drugs into the market. And I think that this is one thing that we have seen a strategic shift since 2022 with the fall of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs v. Jackson case, moving from in-clinic surgical procedures for abortions to a huge shift in the let's push mail order abortions, telemedicine, get it done a different way, avoid the surgical facilities altogether, because now states are starting to become a patchwork of outlawing that. I think that that's definitely a shift we saw in the pro-abortion industry and the Planned Parenthood movement toward that side of how they're going to operate business. But what we're now seeing is we knew that the Food and Drug Administration had accelerated the allowance of these things, had changed a lot of policies, had skipped a lot of safeguards, and it's been called into question, but it's finally reached its way to the Supreme Court, and it's being argued this week. This is really big. I don't really have a whole lot to say on this other than these are probably some oral arguments that you might want to go and listen to, because these are all streamed on the Supreme Court website. You can go and find them. Aaron Hawley has been doing a fantastic job arguing for this position that the FDA has basically recklessly ignored all kinds of patient safety processes in pushing these drugs forward. And they're trying to essentially get the U.S. Supreme Court to affirm the Fifth Circuit's decision that says the FDA acted unlawfully in removing these safeguards and shoving abortion on demand at home pills to the market. That's this. You've heard some of these things because I've seen snippets of it in mainstream news, but I've never seen that outside of conservative news sources. That's succinct. That's what's happening. That's where we started. Here's where we are. Here's what's happening this week, and here's why it matters. And also who's doing the arguing. So this is huge. This is a big deal. It's being argued by I think two women in front of the court who are doing a fantastic job. Their credibility is off the charts for it. Anyway, it is really, really neat to see. I've got actually a video too from Alliance Defending Freedom of Aaron Hall talking about this. I'll include that and a couple of other articles. But this is really neat. I mean, we are defending women's healthcare. Like, this is the left's line. Oh, healthcare. You have skipped over several vital protections for healthcare for women because you want to put abortion pills in their hands, because abortion, this, child sacrifice, is more important to you than the health of women. Don't say this anymore to us, you liars. Like, come on. Look, anyone with half of a brain can look at this and see exactly what's going on. You got any takes on this? We're kind of closing down the end of the show, but I wanted to at least mention this because I think it's very important. Yeah. And this could be setting up a huge Supreme Court decision that will be very consequential for pro-life.
Yeah, I think it is a huge issue. And I think, even just a news item that pops into my head was Olivia Rodrigo, who's a very famous pop singer right now.
Right.
Had one of the biggest albums recently last summer, I believe. It's called Sour. Don't ask me how I know that. I can't even believe
literally
I know
never
that.
heard of her until this news story. So you're more worldly than I am, Andrew.
But she, just for research purposes, but she had a concert in St. Louis. Again, St. Louis coming into the news here, of course. And
never good things.
There's some good things. I like it.
Name one. I'm just kidding.
Opening day, patron St. Albert. Anyway, she had a concert in St. Louis and was handing out, you guessed it, Plan B abortion pills. So this really is kind of the next step. Now that Roe v. Wade's been overturned, it's, hey, let's do these Plan B abortion pills. And, if women can't have, Planned Parenthood and they can't have the abortion brick and mortar place, we're going to give it to them at home. So I think that this is the next best step in the case for the crusade for saving the kids, and good for Aaron for taking the bull by the horns.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, we're going to end it there. That's a good thing to keep your eye on. Keep your eye on Baltimore. We're going to send you some very important stuff. Keep your eye on the presidential election. And here's your homework. There's some books that you should read. There was a very consequential election that took place 60 years ago this year. Andrew, you're not the master of props anymore. Some very important things.
Oh, wow.
You should go and read Barry Goldwater's The Conscience of a Conservative. This is an incredible, now, of course, we're talking about communism in the mid-20th century, but this is an incredibly important book that I think gives some very timeless principles for conservatives who are looking to take their philosophy into practical action. Go get this book. Another consequential one you want to see, None Dare Call It Treason, John Stormer. This is one of the books that really spurred the movement that Phyllis Schlafly's 1964 book, A Choice Not an Echo, picked up on. And of course, this is the 60th anniversary of Phyllis Schlafly's A Choice Not an Echo. Here is our 50th anniversary re-release of that book that Phyllis did herself. We still sell this. In fact, if you email me, I may be able to dig up a copy of the original if you've never gotten a hold of one. There are not very many out there anymore, but a very big 60th anniversary and some very other important books that came out as well from John Stormer, Barry Goldwater. We are in the middle of another one of those incredibly consequential years for America, and it's time for us to be leading in the conversation, leading in the changing of hearts and minds like Liberty Sentinel's doing, Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, and you are doing, participating in this show. Thank you so much, everyone, for being on the chats today. Thank you, Andrew, for guest hosting with us. Thanks, Mason, for hopping in on the chat like a lazy bum there on Rumble and piping up at us without actually being on today. We'll go through all the rest of these. We'll get on the redacted email, go to unauthorizedcaucus.com, sign up for that, and then, of course, like, share, and subscribe, and start the conversation with your friends and family, too. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today, and we will see you next Thursday at noon for another Unauthorized Caucus. Have a good week, everyone.